Well, as we've been hearing, heavy restrictions on Russia have been designed to close off its economy and block it from the global financial system. That's pushing companies to stop sales, cut business ties and dump tens of billions of dollars worth of investments. Well, our correspondent Juliet Mann is here with the details. Juliet.
Thanks, Robin. Thanks, Jamie. Yes, from payment card firms like Visa to big tech to manufacturing, Russians' isolation from the corporate world is deepening. The message is that for now, at least, as we heard from John, Russia is uninvestable. Now, we've talked a lot over the last couple of days about energy and the oil companies. So let's start with motors today. Global auto and truck makers, including Sweden's Volvo, US General Motors and Germany's Daimler Truck, are suspending shipments to the Russian market until further notice. Now, Volvo sold around 9,000 cars in Russia in 2021. General Motors doesn't have plants in Russia, only sells about 3,000 vehicles a year there and has limited supply chain exposure, but it's a statement nonetheless. And Volkswagen in Russia has temporarily suspended deliveries of cars to dealers until further notice, while Mercedes is evaluating options with its Russian interests. No news yet from Ford, which has a 50% stake in 3 Russian plants, other than saying its priority is the safety of its workers. Let's talk bean counters now. The big 4, we've got KPMG, EY, PwC, they're all distancing themselves from Russia. And that was after the UK government told the City of London companies not to work on behalf of the Putin regime. On to logistics, and you can see there's some of the big shippers and aviation companies, Maersk and MSC, they've stopped all container shipping routes in and out of Russia. So we're talking major shipping routes between St. Petersburg and Kaliningrad in the Baltic Sea, Novorossiysk in the Black Sea, and Vladivostok and Vostochny in Russia's east coast. This is really big. An airplane manufacturer, Boeing, they've paused operations at its Moscow training campus and temporarily closed its office in Kiev. Now, the aviation sector is really feeling it, with Russian flight bans, which have hit airlines from 36 countries. So let's talk a little bit more about that with John Strickland, who's an independent aviation business strategist. Good to see you, John. Thanks for coming on the programme. Now, we know the why, but it's more disruption, isn't it, to a sector that's really struggling?
Yes, yeah, you're right to say the sector has been struggling for the last 2 years because of the coronavirus pandemic on a global basis. And airlines, certainly, if we look at Western Europe and North America, we're starting to get a bit more optimistic about the coming summer season, which, of course, is normally the key money-making time of the year. We've seen markets opening up within Europe, and certainly hopes that the transatlantic is going to get back more to its full vigour in the months ahead. Interestingly enough, in the context of now the war in Ukraine, the one part of the world which was still, so to speak, off limits is Asia. Many countries in Asia are not open at all, including China, when it comes to international passenger travel. And that, in a strange way, is a saving grace right now with the sanctions coming in from Russia on airlines whose own countries have put airspace closures onto Russian carriers, because airlines from Western Europe and indeed other parts of the globe would normally use Russian airspace on overflights, for example, on Europe and Asian services. It's the quickest and most cost-effective route. It is one, by the way, that the Russians earn significant foreign exchange from. But the closure would normally be a big hit, but because these markets from a passenger point of view are effectively out of action right now, the hit is not really very measurable, with one exception, and that is Finnair, which is an airline in Europe which has made a virtue out of its northern location in Helsinki to operate a hub, providing numerous connections from a whole host of European cities to equally a whole host of cities in Asia, including several in China. They issued a release yesterday saying they've had to withdraw all guidance because their business model, in effect, is somewhat grounded at the present time.
So Finnair, more or less grounded, certainly in terms of its business model. Look, I know it's really hard to put a number on these things, but if the ultimate goal is to cripple trade and investment in Russia, can you give us an idea of how this is going to hit passenger numbers and airline revenues?
It is very difficult to say, and at the moment hard to disentangle it from the coronavirus impact. if Asia and China being the biggest market does remain closed for quite some time, and certainly even before this change of status militarily in the last week, most airlines were not expecting any immediate change in terms of opening up for China, then it doesn't make a lot of difference. If we look at non-Finnair figures, for example, British Airways is single-digit exposed to Asia. So provided that the transatlantic market opens up and intra-European markets as well, then airlines can redeploy aircraft onto those markets instead. We're expecting a very buoyant transatlantic market this summer, even more so than usual because of a lot of pent-up demand. But if we do see Asian markets opening up and airlines would be wishing to put aircraft back in, and we'd see normal tourism flows and business flows between China and other Asian countries in Europe, then the hit would be greater. But we're certainly not there yet. And of course, I shouldn't forget that fuel prices, which were already on the rise because of coronavirus, have been pushed up even more now because of the military conflict. That itself is an immediate hit to the bottom line.
John Strickland, thank you very much for your insight. It does seem that the airline sector is in for an even bigger shake-up than we anticipated in the wake of the global pandemic.